Back with week 2. March Madness. This is like I guess you would call these the quarterfinals. We've done the Sweet 16.
I'm not good at fractions, so I'll take your word for it.
Well, yeah, I think that's how it works. They're all musicians, so it's all divisible by 4, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, had 16, eliminated half of them, and according to how they're still seated, so we've got Van Halen 1984 versus Long Cold Winter, Cinderella. We've got Poison, Open Up and Say Ah versus Motley Crue, Shout at the Devil. We've got Appetite for Destruction, GNR versus Slippery When Wet, Bon Jovi.
Tight bracket.
Def Leppard, Pyromania versus Twisted Sister, Stay Hungry. So those are your quarterfinalists. Which one should we start with?
I don't know. Start at the top. Let's just have the Cinderella discussion now, I guess.
Okay.
The brackets are tougher this week because there's, some that are a little tighter. I think some are still a little easy, but last week we kind of went through the history and our personal connections of so many of these things. So I just try to look more at songs this week and really get a sense of the strength of each album. So when I look at Van Halen's 1984, arguably their greatest album in a lot of ways. Definitely one of my favorites, and I listen to it a lot still, which always says a lot. The high parts and the low parts, and kind of there's really nothing in between on here. It's either an absolute knock it out of park hit for me, like Jump and Panama and Hot for Teacher. Those 3 songs alone. I Wait Too was a radio hit. Just absolute guitar madness on all of that. And even the synth stuff, Eddie does everything well. Some of the deep cuts, Top Jimmy, I still love that song. It's such a fun, I think it's about a guy that worked at a taco stand or something and was in a band. Because Top Jimmy cooks, Top Jimmy swings. Was apparently the reference. But I love that song. Drop Dead Legs, I've always thought is one of their great songs. One of the cool jams at the end of that song where they let the band kind of breathe a little bit. Kind of the 2 brothers going Zeppelin style at the end there or something. They just kind of let the tape roll and hear Eddie and his brother have some fun, which is cool. So like the top end of this album is so strong. I've always thought the last 2 tracks were a little weak when you stack them up against the other ones, Girl Gone Bad and House of Pain. They're just sort of average. Sounds like something off a deep cut off a Fair Warning or something like that. Like not something that was that great.
Can you do your phone?
I'm using my phone.
Yeah, but can I have that iPad?
No, I need it. I need them both, baby. Use the computer. This is live, people. Okay, well, you're just gonna have to watch some shows on there. This is fun, eh? This is all scripted.
Yeah.
Sweet, I can't use my phone. Okay, sorry. Yeah, I've always felt. Ooh, see that? Always can turn the lights off. This is gonna be the best part of this entire podcast. Now I look like we should have done the Twisted Sister or Shout at the Devil or something like that.
What is that?
Okay, I'm gonna go turn on the lights if I can. Okay, go away. I love you. Go away. All right. Oh, now here comes.
Is that a Twisted Sister,
Speak
buddy?
of the devil. Whoa, yes,
On
I'm
your
a Twisted
shirt?
Sister. On your uniform. Okay. Anyway.
Yeah.
I know. Okay. Anyway, I just find it ironic that there are, and I went back and re-listened to those tracks, and they're good. They're fine. Sorry, now you're getting calls in here. They're just not as strong as the other songs. And I don't know if that's really, they're still good Van Halen songs. They're just not Hot for Teacher or Drop Dead Legs or Panama, like these quintessential FM rock radio tracks. So unbelievably strong album. Great album work, album cover. Maybe a little heavy with the name, but it came out in 1984, so I'm not going to question Eddie. I don't think he was trying to be literary. It was probably just, hey, it's 1984.
Nigel's gone.
Nigel's gone. Well, what about you, Jörg?
Well, this is the one bracket where I could be wrong. I don't know what Jeff was going to do just then, but that everyone's just an Eddie fanboy. That this seems like clear to me. But the truth is that I listened to the Cinderella album, for last week, and was never part of my rotation. And it just, there things that stick out from here. The sound, the guitar is huge on the Cinderella record, Long Cold Winter, and the voice, and that's what. Well, yeah, and the voice is unique.
Yes.
Is that good or bad? I'm not sure.
Yeah. And Gypsy Road, I kind of remember, but I don't know. I listened to this and it just didn't stick. As somebody who, like there's another album that in here that I know very well that realistically probably isn't a great album, but so this one as a 46-year-old, I'm just not sticking for me. So that's really what I would lean to. But this 1984, I'm, as a guitar guy, I like Van Halen 1 and 2. Those are, and of course Fair Warning. Those are the ones that I'm really familiar with, and listening to it this way, just kind of with an ear to like, what do I like and what do I not like? And I was struck by, this is a really strong rock and roll record from beginning to end. House of Pain maybe doesn't quite fit with the whole thing, but that being said, House of Pain could fit on like Fair Warning or something. Like it's, it's a classic Van Halen track. It just kind of sticks out on this album.
Which I think is when it was recorded or something, right? It was an old song.
Is it? Yeah, even it sounds different. It just sounds like it's from a different world or something. Yeah. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, Top Jimmy was kind of my sleeper for this listen because Jump and Panama were well known. When I was young, I loved Hot for Teacher, and I think it's just got that. It's not because of the fact that I don't care about the issue. It's a rock and roll song, but I'm just sick of it. Kind of,
I love the journey of it though. It kind of goes all over. It's like it's so goofy, and it's got all the guitar antics and the drum thing, and then a great riff and the swag, just the quintessential David Lee Roth swagger in there.
It does have
got my pencil.
It has DLR, one of his, best, middle song. Anyways, for me, it's this is the most obvious one as 1984.
Great.
Yeah, I didn't get it. Sorry, I was getting cut off.
Yeah,
I'm probably the biggest defender of Cinderella on here. I still really actually kind of like this album. But it doesn't stack up to 1984. It's a good rock album. It's got lots of good songs on it. But it's got some trappings of cliche songwriting, obviously, and some obvious bridges. And, Tom Kiefer loves the same bridge in every song. He does. All his ballads have the exact same bridge, and they always feel a little tacked on to me. So I think it's just a little bit of, there's some cliche, obviously, and stuff. Whereas Eddie, they've created their own cliche. So any cliche they have, it's because they did it first and they did it better than everybody else. So, and it's usually David Lee Roth that's the cliche, not Eddie. So, he's got charisma.
He's got the charisma.
No, I every day of the week I'm taking Van Halen in this battle for sure. Even though I like the Cinderella album. Sorry, go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, well, I'm in the same boat. I would pick 1984 all day long, every time, just because it's Eddie fanboy, but also like the entire album is just very inventive. Like it's a unique. Every song is like no one else would write really a song like Hot for Teacher that way.
It's creative.
Like it's just extremely creative. And then when you think that, like, what year did Van Halen 1 come out? Like 78,
77, 78, something like that.
Yeah.
So between
it's only 6 years. Yeah.
This wasn't their debut album and then they just disappeared. This was, so there's 1, 2, Women, Children First, Fair Warning, and Diver Down. And then 1984. So this was their 6th album in 5 years.
Yeah.
And they were able to come up with this at that time. That's just mind blowing to me that they could do that. So I love
Yeah.
it. Cinderella
I make-
is an
That's right.
enjoyable album to listen to. I still enjoy kind of listening to it. The voice, if you're not ready for it, does sort of take your head off a little bit when you're listening to it. But there's quite a
It's
few
like
of the
when that
songs
crazy
that are
uncle comes over and everyone warns you. Just so
Yeah.
you know, he's a little crazy,
yeah,
but he's all right. It's like, okay, at least he prepared me for it.
the
Or he's got
shooter
a
was
glass
broken.
eye. Don't
you
stare
know.
at it.
yeah,
What?
but songs like "Coming Home," like there's a bunch of songs like that on that album that I'm like,
The Last Mile is a pretty good song.
Last
The Last
Mile.
Mile, that's a great song. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's some great songs.
there's some good songs on there, so I enjoy it. But compared to 1984, there's no chance for me.
Yeah. To Diamond Dave's credit, he's a creative guy. Like his songs, they're either sometimes they don't work, but talk about unique song premises. Like just the nature of that. So many songs that we've been talking about, like last week with the Rat album, those type of, like just like no creativity, just very very cliched song lyrics and song riffs. So really creative. I think that's a slam dunk.
I think so.
I think so.
That's a
Yeah.
basketball term. What do we got? We got Poison and
Poison and Motley Crue.
the
Open
Crue.
up and say
All right.
"Ah." Shout at the devil. Two of your more quintessential 80s hair bands of the
Oh,
time.
yeah.
Lots of hair, lots of spandex.
As far as
One's a
albums
little earlier.
go. Yeah.
I think I started last time, so feel free to jump in. Who wants to go?
This
Chris,
one's-
you want to go back the other way?
Sure. So if the last one was a slam dunk, this one is kind of more like that mid-level, which I guess it is, but like these are not heavyweights compared to some of the others in the other brackets, I think, as far as albums go. At the time, I would say that the Poison album was much more my favorite back in the day, just because their hits were big hits. And I'm like Fallen Angel and Nothing But a Good Time and, Big Ballad. It was all like I loved all of those songs at the time. Whereas Motley Crue, there's like one or two singles off that album that were pretty catchy and I liked, and then the rest of it is a bit of a slog to get through. Whereas, at least for me on that album, whereas on that Poison one, the filler material is pretty weak, but it's still kind of fun. Like, I don't know what are some of the other ones on that, like
Yeah.
Back to the Rockin' Horse,
Bad
and,
to be good. Ooh.
Love on the Rocks. It's like, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know what that means, but so in terms of just like poppy, catchy, disposable kind of throwaway hair metal album, there's a lot of classic, stupid, awesome rockers on that one, and there's less of those on the Motley Crue one, I find. So I'd probably give it to Poison on that one. If it was a later Motley one, I would probably give it to like Dr. Feelgood is my favorite of theirs.
Yeah.
It's a much stronger album, but it came later. It was in '89, so it missed our cutoff for this one. Yeah. For this one, Shout at the Devil. I would pick Poison over it just because of the poppy catchiness of some of the other songs in addition to the hits that are on this one.
It's fair. I'll go, Jorg. I'll let you decide.
All right. Okay. Pressure.
Well, I'll start with Poison because certainly at that time that was a band I far preferred, I think, to Motley Crue. Motley Crue's always a singles band to me. I always knew the videos, right? They were heavy rotation on Much Music, so you'd hear all the singles. And you're right. I think Dr. Feelgood is still a pretty solid rock album to their credit. I've always found I go back to some of these albums and I realize how thin some of it is. But they really knew how to get a single together, to their credit. I think they were always that band that were like, we need 2 or 3 singles. I think the most evident one of that is listen to the Theater of Pain album. which is the theater of pain for painful. Like the rest of it is so there's not a lot there, right?
Yeah.
They had the Smoke in the Boys Room cover to save it, I think, and then Home Sweet Home was the big anthem. That's still one of their quintessential songs, but there's not much on there. But Home Sweet Home, I think a lot of people would still think that's a great album just on the strength of that one single. And when I look back on this one, like Shout at the Devil was an anthem of the early 80s. This is 1983 too. Like it's pretty early, right?
Yeah.
Scared the crowd. They always sort of had that sort of 666 kind of vibe going too, right? So it always scared me a little bit because I was only 8 years old when this album came out. I was in elementary school. But Shout at the Devil is still. I was just driving with my son like a half an hour ago and cramming to listen to the rest of this album because I hadn't listened to all of it. And he was getting the fist was pumping at Shout at the Devil. And then I'm noticing how thin Vince's voice is in the high parts, even in 1983. But that song totally works. And then, Looks to Kill and Too Young to Fall in Love are just really catchy, riff-heavy songs. It drops off really quick after that. So that's just the nature, I think, of just about any Motley Crue album. And then when I look at the Poison album, I don't think it's much better as far as the quick drop off, frankly. And I loved Nothing But a Good Time when I was a kid. I'm not ashamed to say I was a huge Poison fan back in the day. I've always kind of defended C.C. DeVille as sort of a guitar player because I could still sing his solos. And so many guitar players back then, like their solos were just mine the scales and tapping and showing off, and it's so forgettable. It's just sort of, I always joke, I shouldn't admit this, but I joke sometimes that solos like that are like public masturbation. The only one enjoying it is the person doing it. And some of those solos kind of reek of that a little bit. And CC, certainly he had his histrionics and he would show off a little bit, but I can sing his guitar solos to his credit. He probably wasn't the most technical player at that time. But you could say the same thing about Motley Crue and what's his name? My brain's going off.
Mick Mars.
Mick Mars, like
Mars,
not the most
yeah.
technical, but catchy guitar parts, musical-minded guy. So I'm going to base my pick really not on the album I listened to the most when I was young, because I probably wouldn't go back and listen to either of these albums back to front right now, quite frankly. But Motley Crue really does have a swagger. And to their credit, it has lived on. Being a high school teacher, and I teach guitar at high school. I'm around rock dudes all the time. They love Motley Crue. They wear the shirts. They know the movie. They know all the hits. If there's a band from this era, it probably eclipses Van Halen in popularity nowadays with kids who are 14, 15, and 16 years old. So I'm going to give it to Motley Crue. They're one of those quintessential hair metal bands, one of the most successful of all time, define the genre. And just they got a little more edge and a little more swagger than Poison does. Poison just sort of becoming a later band, frankly, and probably copying this a little bit. So I'm going to give it to Shout at the Devil.
It's not where I thought that was going. You surprised me.
I knew. That's why you're going to decide, buddy.
Yeah, you can spin a narrative.
Now you're stumped.
This when I think of hair metal, if I'm not sitting there with you guys, then we can list many names. But if anybody says, "Oh yeah, hair metal," it's like, "Oh yeah, Poison and Motley Crue," right? Somehow that's what I think of. So these two albums were really kind of a grind, actually. But,
they're not great albums.
No.
Really not.
But so I listened to the Poison album because again, like if you listen to it, there's more hits than I thought there was, and ones that they're like, oh yeah, I remember this song. And I was listening because I know that you had talked about CC DeVille and his, he's not up to Jake Lee's standard guitar playing.
20 minutes.
Who is?
20-minute mark.
Who is? I do love it. We didn't get Jake. Where was? Seriously, we couldn't get one of the Ozzy albums on this list just so I could talk about Jake Lee the whole time.
No, because we said
the moon.
Because that was one of our rules. Was bands only, no single artists.
So anyways, I thought a few things that surprised me because I was prejudging. I was prejudiced.
Oh.
And I thought a couple of things is that if I'm listening to that kind of guitar playing, that 80s flashy guitar playing, it's what you said, Jeff, is it's melodic playing in a lot of cases. And it's got a kind of there's a little bit of a swagger to it, I think, more than I heard in like the Rat album, except for Round
for sure.
and Round. What's his name? Bret Michaels. That he does not have a good singing voice. At least I didn't think so.
He is a poor man's David Lee Roth. Like
he is. Yeah. It's thin. Kind of doesn't have a lot of swagger, actually. Because I assumed it would, but if I'm listening to it closely, in this kind of listening, it doesn't. And then all of these songs, this album has the most cliche to track ratio.
Definitely.
Every rose has its thorn.
That's genius.
Look, but you can't touch. I mean, actually, if you look at every single title, it's a cliche. Good
Yep.
Love, Tearing Down the Walls, Love on the Rocks. So yeah. And I'm sorry, another thing I liked about CC DeVille's playing, he does a kind of, if this is even a thing, a glam metal Keith Richards thing. I don't know if there's a kind of a, like he does this sound, and I want to say it's that kind of Keith Richards add-on. You hear it on Nothing But a Good Time, the way that he does kind of. Anyways, it's a pretty rock and roll sound that he has. Just a little slick.
Yeah.
Right? Shout at the Devil is got that darkness about it that you think of as heavy metal, and so it is definitely hair metal, and that's where Motley Crue were headed. But I think that they were still kind of in that dark, let's try and be satanic kind of period. And that's obvious with the title and the title track. Looks to Kill is cool. I mean, it's pretty cool. I
gotta quote you on that. Looks to Kill. It's pretty cool. It's my new favorite song.
Too Young to Fall in Love.
That was my wedding song, Eric. Going down the aisle.
And it's exactly the same as the Poison album in a lot of the things. Like Mick Mars is okay, I don't think they were ever trying to be the flashiest players in Motley Crue, which maybe that's to their credit. They're just being what they are, more or less. And Vince Neil's not a good singer either.
Nope.
Like at all, really.
No.
And I'm not sure if he had swagger or was he just a douche. I'm not sure. And maybe
it was the 80s.
Yes. And so that this is the one. The other ones I'm pretty clear on how I feel, but this is the one where I'm like, what am I even looking for? I assumed that I was going to be the odd one out here, but when I think of metal, there's a bit of a, just kind of an undercurrent to it, and so that's where I think Shout at the Devil has the metal in it. It's more of a metal album to me. So I'm going to pick Shout at the Devil.
Terrible.
You got to listen to it for one more week, Chris. Give it another spin, buddy.
Oh, no.
All
okay.
right.
I will say that, the pitting Vince Neil versus Bret Michaels is probably the weakest of the singer battles of this whole group.
For sure.
For sure. That's pretty slim pickings there. All right.
All right. I think we should save the Bon Jovi appetite for the last discussion because I think that's the closest. I think we should talk about Def Leppard and Twisted Sister first.
Sure.
Okay.
Pyromania
I think Chris is probably
Hungry.
still surprised that Stay Hungry's here. Jorg and I went on a nostalgic early 80s metal vibe last week. Go ahead. You should start. Jorg, I don't think you've started yet. Go, man.
Okay. So Pyromania has a couple of good tracks on it. I listened to it though, and you might feel different. You probably do feel different, but I feel like it's a hits album. Rock of Ages, Photograph. It's two rocks, right? Rock till you drop.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Never
That
stop, buddy.
Well, we're still doing this, so. And then I didn't. It had very much Def Leppard sound. That is this is Mutt Lange, right? This is still one of his.
Yep.
Yep.
First one that Mutt did with him. Yep.
And to me, it's just the
2
rock.
years removed from Back in Black.
Yeah, to me, like you pick that example, Back in Black is just pure rock and roll, and to me, this isn't quite that. This is a pop album, and which is fine. There's nothing wrong with it being a pop album. But I actually found it to be a tough listen. Except for those 3 songs, they're really good. That in Photograph I mentioned last week, if it comes on the radio, that's to me a good car song. That's when you get your Jimmy Page face going with the pursed lips going like this, and then I more or less found it a tough listen. Stay Hungry. I don't know where to place this. This album has a unique status in my life, and so I'm not gonna feel the same way about Stay Hungry than probably anybody. I was sort of thought, well, it's just a couple of hits on there and big ones. We're Not Gonna Take It is obviously huge. And then I listened to I Wanna Rock, and I remembered that when I was like 12, I still do know every single word. And how for some reason it feels like important, even though it's not. And this one has some cliche albums like The Nature of the Beast. This one, I don't know. This is a weird comparison, Pyromania to Stay Hungry, because they're not really the same thing. Stay Hungry.
They're very different.
Stay Hungry is the one of all of these albums that is just, we're going to be a goofy, cartoonish band. And I find that fun. It's the funnest one to me. Of all these albums, to me, it's the most fun. I was confused about who Captain Howdy was, but I still didn't want anything to do with Captain Howdy. So, because Dee was telling me to stay away. And then, of course, the tones and the playing is not super awesome.
They all had a Boss endorsement. It's like
yeah,
a Boss Metal Zone or something on every track.
I'm going this way because I feel safe about my choice. I feel safe that I will be overruled. So I'm going to Stay Hungry.
I knew you would. Christopher, what do you got?
Same thing, but in reverse. So
Yeah.
Because I was talking a little bit about this last week, and it's combined for me. It blends together with Hysteria because I had both of those albums and I had the video collection and stuff all at the same time, so they all kind of blend together for me. But my emotional attachment to Pyromania and to Hysteria and those songs and watching them perform it live and stuff was really, really formative in my youth. And the kind of songs the way that I like songs written, the way that I like the guitarist to sound, all of it, there's a lot of it that comes out of Def Leppard. So that emotional attachment I have to those albums is really, really strong. And I don't have that with Twisted Sister. I only knew the two singles that they would play on video hits, and then the song that's in the Pee Wee Herman movie.
Was it Stay Hungry?
No, it's
Burn in Hell.
Burn in Hell.
Yeah.
Can I just say that that's a great round?
Okay, you may.
You see no evil, don't you hear no evil down on me.
You're gonna burn in hell.
Yes. If you don't have that emotional attachment to Twisted Sister, everything that you said about Poison kind of applies to the Twisted Sister album. It's really fun. Every title is a cliche. The sound is really thin. It's like everything kind of translates over. Whereas for me, Pyromania, the songs that didn't speak to you were all like Too Late for Love and Die Hard the Hunter and Rock Rock Till You Drop. Those are all like those are fist pumping ones for me. So I don't know, it was really formative for me, and I love listening to those albums even to this day. And to me, those are the albums that are fun for me. More so than like going back and listening to Stay Hungry, having missed that train, I guess, and just listening to it on its musical merits alone. It just, to me, it doesn't hold up when you compare the craft and the songwriting and the performance and everything else on one side to the other. You know, it's great Carolina made it to the playoffs and it's exciting and we really liked it, but Tampa Bay is just like the better, so I got to go with Pyromania.
And that's probably true. I've always resisted the Leppard, so
yeah. You've never been a big Poppy guy, and they're pretty poppy, so
yeah.
And Carolina can burn in hell because they beat us in 06. Anyway, you're gonna burn in hell.
See, no. I used to imagine JJ French was doing that part, but
yeah, he's holding his ear to get the right tone. Feed no evil, no. Moses Lack style. All right, well, again, too bad. It's interesting. These albums are essentially the same year release, considering the demise of Twisted Sister immediately after this and the meteoric rise of Def Leppard that followed, which is just kind of interesting. I sometimes forget Def Leppard was an early '80s British new wave metal band, right? They were right in there with all the Judas Priests and the Iron Maidens and these bands that came over. It's just interesting. And I think it's funny on the Def Leppard album, you can still hear hints of that. Joe Elliott's voice is pretty raw on this album. They kept cleaning him up. You listen to those early, you go back and listen to High and Dry, they're more of a rockin' band. And I listened to some of the outtakes, like Me and My Wine and stuff. Because I remember that video as a kid.
Yep.
Right? Like, it was like a rock, just a good stomping rock song. I was like, oh yeah, they used to just be kind of a big dumb rock band before Mutt had his way with them. I think with Def Leppard, I mean, the influence of producer had so much to do with them. And this is the album when you really start to hear it. So I was trying to think of it in terms of, I think part of last week we didn't really talk about some of the behind the scenes, sort of like the Wizard of Oz stuff that went on in the 80s. They had producers that produced, like Mutt being probably the best example of that. They had songwriters that backed up a lot of these bands, the Desmond Childs of the world and these people that would just work with every band, it seemed. You go through liner notes back then, it's just like, man, this guy, how much money does this guy have? He wrote this song for that band, this song for that band. But Def Leppard, I think, bought into all of that because I think they had much higher career aspirations than a lot of those other bands. They really did want to be the biggest band in the world, and they became it for about 6 months, to their credit. So this album's kind of interesting because I probably connect more with Hysteria just because I was of the age to take that album in more, and you couldn't get away from Hysteria. 1988, 87, whatever it was everywhere, and it was massive. So I kind of like the rawness as far as Def Leppard goes, the rawness of this album. Joe's voice is like still kind of AC/DC style, kind of throaty singing and screaming a little bit. Steve Clark is all over these songs. I think sometimes we forget with Def Leppard. Everyone talks about the tragedy with the arm and these types of things. But I mean, Steve Clark died shortly after the Hysteria album was released. He was apparently a very dark soul and a horrendous alcoholic, and led to all of that, which is really sad. So I always I have this not nostalgic, I guess, just this emotional connection to this kid that grew up playing his Les Paul and writing rock riffs with all his buddies, and he got to to live the dream I think I wanted to dream, but it was too much for him. There's actually, just to bring Tesla in, there's a great song on the Psychotic Supper album called Song and Emotion that they dedicated to Steve Clark, because they toured together all through the 80s. They were very good friends, and those two bands still tour together. They're a unit that works, and it's probably the only reason Tesla ever sold any albums is they're smart enough to tour with Def Leppard. And so Steve Clark's all over, all those cool, like, he's kind of the Izzy Stradlin, I think, of Def Leppard, because once he left, they became adrenalized, right?
Yeah.
And it was like, where's the rock and roll, man? Like, it kind of vanished. And Mutt could just have his way with him. I think he was the real old school rocker that held him back into that pocket of the kind of music that I like. So, because if there's ever a band that I loved and then almost instantly hated, when the Adrenalize album came out, I was like, and maybe it was the grunge pressures of that, but I was like, holy crap, guys, like, this is terrible. It was pretty bad. So I lost complete interest in this band, and I've never listened to a single track since. Every time I hear a single, I'm just like nauseated by it. I haven't enjoyed anything by Def Leppard past that point. So, But anyway, Pyromania is an album. I do. It's fun. It's still kind of early 80s fun, stupid rock and roll, rock till you drop. Because I'm trying to think, like, there's the hits. Photograph's a great pop song, and it's catchy, and it always will be. Foolin' is kind of, they do that minor kind of arpeggio verses and bridges really well, and then they get the big chorus going. That's sort of always been Def Leppard's thing, and Foolin's all over that stuff. Too Late for Love has that kind of vibe to it as well. And then, of course, Rock of Ages is still one of my favorite fist-pumping rock songs of all time. So the deep cuts, like Stage Fright, I think is a pretty cool song. It's it's almost a little hysteria-ish. Die Hard the Hunter is probably the deep cut to listen on here. It's kind of a darker kind of rocker song. So I think there's some meat on this album. I don't think they're all great songs, but for the most part, they're pretty solid. I went into great detail about my Twisted Sister fascination last week, just because of, again, just the age when you become interested in music. The bands that hit you at that time will always mean something to you. And I think I shocked Chris last week when I let Twisted Sister win. But I guess I'll tell. It's kind of a funny story, but I have my old guitar lesson binder from when I was a kid, from good old Dan Schmuland, and every little tab he wrote out for me of that time is in there, and all these theory lessons that I don't remember him teaching me, but apparently he was a good teacher, and I ignored those.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Dan. There's no way he's watching this and be like, dudes, this sucks. However, on the cover of that binder is every band I loved back then. And guess which two emblems are the most obvious? There's a giant TS, Twisted Sister, and Def Leppard is almost the entire middle part of it. Those two bands. It's just funny. I'm like, what are the chances of that? So to pit these guys against one another. So to look at the Stay Hungry album as just an album cover wise, there is a bone, which is pretty awesome actually. Stay Hungry, I think, was actually dedicated to Arnold Schwarzenegger. If you read the liner notes, because he had that. There's a movie he was in called Stay Hungry. So if you look on the original liner notes, Stay Hungry was, and that meant something to me as a kid, because I think Twisted Sister is kind of like Arnold Schwarzenegger of rock and roll. It's kind of big and stupid, but everybody watched those movies in the '80s and sort of loved them and look back and laugh at them in their own way. It does have the two big hits. I'll always side with I Want to Rock. And again, my son and I were driving, listening to I Want to Rock tonight. And my little Thomas was feeling it, man. He was rocking out, which was pretty funny. Then he wanted to skip pretty much every other song. I'm like, no, I got to listen to this. I got to know what I'm talking about. So The Price, he was cool with that. Don't Let Me Down actually wasn't a bad song. It was fine. It was just sort of one of those mediocre middle of the road songs. The Beast is terrible. It's a pretty bad song. The guitar riff it's so painfully bad. Like it sounds like stock footage on a sports highlight package or something. Like, it's not good. Just really, really lame guitar riff. And you joked about how bad the cliche of the title is. And SMF, you got to get your cryptic swearing in on albums back then. So So as an album, I still enjoy it. I still kind of love Twisted Sister, but I think if I'm gonna let the kings of that age, had to let D. Snyder's Hair win one week, but I can't let it win two. So I'll give it to Def Leppard on this one. All right.
All right.
Well, there you
And
go.
then there was one.
I'm predicting this will
Okay.
be like what just happened, but in reverse. But we'll see. So this is GNR, Appetite for Destruction versus Bon Jovi, Slippery When Wet.
Who wants to take it?
Can I start? I'll start.
Yeah, go for it.
This is the toughest choice for me. I think if you're looking in every category to the bands that were like influential, yes. Album sales, both.
Yeah.
Like career longevity, probably, well, really both about the same. From two different camps, though, right? Like Bon Jovi's a pop band, and Guns N' Roses is more of a punk band, probably, like really in their attitude and stuff. So from two very different sides of it's like which side of the tracks are you from kind of mentality.
Yeah.
So it's a tough comparison because it's almost sad they beat each other this early in the battle, because I think both of these albums could almost be the final four in there. So it was a tough choice. Last week I listened to the Bon Jovi album all the way through, and I was blown away at how freaking good it is, man. Every track, there's not a throwaway track on there. Every track has a purpose on that album. The first one, what is it? Let It Rock. Is a bit of a cliched '80s rock song, but it does kind of rock. And I think it's just funny of that time. It's 1986, so I Want to rock till you drop. There's a lot of those albums about rock, or a lot of songs about it, and so Bon Jovi wrote that song. And they probably wrote a catchier version of it than all the other ones, and so it works as an opener. You want to talk high points of hits? I mean, still quintessential rock songs. You Give Love a Bad Name. It's the first song I ever heard by Bon Jovi when I was a kid. Right when the tape was released, my good buddy Kurt's older brother worked for some kind of like tape distribution company, so he always got everything really early. And I was sitting hanging out with my buddy Kurt, and he's like, "You gotta hear this." And You Give Love a Bad Name sounded like the greatest piece of music I'd ever heard in my life. It's just so candy coated, and it's so huge and catchy, and the talk box on it's got all the of all the hits, it's actually aged the worst, I think. But at that time, it was bigger than life. Living on a Prayer is, I think I said last week, a textbook in pop songwriting. Almost didn't make the album, apparently, which I think is hilarious now when you look back. That Living on a Prayer wasn't going to be on here because they had trouble with the arrangement or something. They couldn't quite figure it out. Cheesy, but at the same time, you kind of feel for him, It's just like, yeah, Tommy did used to work on the docks. That stupid union. And I joked about the Bruce Springsteen connection last week, like if he was playing on some of those themes with this in a much cheesier way. I use it in my class to talk about key changes, because at the end they go up to this impossible key that John Bon can't even sing then on. So it's one of those fist pumpers. Wanted Dead or Alive. I love that song. I love it. I still play it on guitar. It's a lot of fun. So it's got all the hits. And then if you look at B-sides like Social Disease and Raise Your Hands is just an anthem. Without Love's a ballad, but boy, it fits that time. I'd Die for You, talk about every girl must have just felt something listening to that in the 80s. Never Say Goodbye again, all these kind of, and then finish it with Big Wild in the Street. So this is a really solid album. I was surprised how much I really actually enjoyed it. So today last week I didn't actually listen to the Guns N' Roses album because I knew it pretty well, and I didn't feel I just didn't have time because there's so many albums to listen to. So I gave Appetite, I haven't listened to that whole album back to front in a few years, so I did the whole deal today. And it's a really good rock album, no question. Again, back to front. The high points, the Welcome to the Jungles, of course, Paradise City, And Sweet Child of Mine is just like an iconic song. They got 3 giant hits out of this album. Deeper cuts. It's just I don't like Axl Rose as a guy. You know what I mean? Like I wouldn't. It's one of those things. It's like if I'm gonna hang out with someone, I don't think I'd hang out with either of those guys, John Bunch over him, but frankly, but I'd probably go hang out with Izzy. But It's So Easy is a great rock song until he gets so crass. You know, like it's so easy to have sex with a bunch of women. It's like, okay, dude, like, but that's so of that time, right? But sewering that attitude in such a worse way than other bands did. But again, it's still like a riff heavy, good rock song. Night Train, I always laugh because I think it has one of the catchiest guitar riffs ever written in Night Train. The down, 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 like it's so good, and the lyrics are great. And it has one of the cheesiest tacked on choruses I've ever heard in my life. I always joke to my son whenever we hear it that it sounds like Axl's doing heavy metal jazz hands. Night train, Scooby-Doo, I'm on the night train. Like, I'm like, guys, that's what you came up with? And it pisses me off because I love the verses of that song. I really do. And then you get, like, Axl Rose Paranoia's Out to Get Me, and it's like, okay, you okay, Axl? Who's following you? I love Mr. Brownstone. If I'm going to look for Mr. Brownstone and Rocket Queen are my 2 deep cuts on here that I really love, actually. I still love those songs. I can listen to them any day of the week. Paradise City is one of my favorite rock songs of all time. I think it works in all ways. Then you get some more My Michelle's. A pretty good rock song, actually. It's just, again, actually, the lyrics don't bother me as much. It's more of a biographical song, I think. Someone he knew who, just that L.A. and, like, talks about pornography. But it's like, yeah, he grew up in Sunset Strip of L.A. You know, it's probably true. Then we get into some of the deep cuts that I think aren't actually that great. Like, Think About You is a fairly lame song. It's fine. You're Crazy's, it's crass, but it's a rock song. It's fine. Anything Goes is just actually not a very strong song. It's just kind of weak. And then they end it with Rocket Queen. I think the album would have been actually a lot stronger to make it a 10-track album and get rid of those 2. So yeah, I am going to... Man, this is a tough choice, though. That's a tough choice. If I'm going to go hair of that time, like, why is this in this round? This is like top 4 stuff. It's tough for me to call. I think Guns N' Roses is... screw it. I'm just going to say Bon Jovi. Go ahead. I don't need to explain. I talk too much. I think it's a more solid album. I think every track is of the same quality. And Bon Jovi, John Bon's he's a ridiculously talented guy. So, there. I'm going to shut up. Oh, but if you think about it, sorry. Oh, I meant to say that I love Steven Adler. Nobody loves Steven Adler. I love that guy. And I just voted against his band. But they all, like, wrote him off, so he probably would agree with me.
I've got Steven Adler on a different list that I was thinking about.
Oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about.
I think so too.
Yeah, I guess I started talking, so I'll go. You know, I don't want to be misunderstood if anybody's actually watching this, which is entirely possible. Nobody is. This is the strongest lyric. Well, it's funny how some of the brackets turned out, how they're paired, like the Motley Crue and the Poison were like, those are hair metal bands. And it's funny you mentioned Twisted Sister and Def Leppard on your binder. And this is the lyrics. These 2 albums, in my mind, are the strongest lyrically. And I don't want to necessarily go on record and saying that Axl Rose is a good lyricist, except he is.
He's either hit or miss. Like, they're amazing or... Yeah.
And so
Night
I
Train,
started...
for example.
Night Train. Yeah, Night Train. I imagined these albums, these 2, as narrators. John Bon Jovi is narrating one, and Axl Rose is narrating this one. And I had 2 very different images. It's being more of a indie punk, whatever you want to pick. kind of guy. Bon Jovi always kind of offended me as being like the football guy, right? Chiseled chin, kick sand at the beach kind of character is what I imagine. And it's probably not fair because I think I've heard that he's a really decent guy.
Yeah, ironically, it's probably the opposite, where he was a super nice guy and Axl was the guy going and kicking sand in people's faces, right?
Yeah,
nightmare.
And if I take that same lens and look at the Axl Rose, it's just miserable from beginning to end, and I don't want to spend any time with Axl Rose. Like, I don't. These lyrics are just great in a way that, although I thought Bon Scott's better, but in the way that Bon Scott can write a lyric, it's a little bit menacing and a little bit dirty. Well, a lot dirty. And and so I imagine Axl Rose is kind of narrating like the seedy side of Sunset Strip, and Bon Jovi is narrating something else, kind of I guess working class, one that living on a prayers, everyman kind of thing. Except he himself doesn't remind me of an everyman. I don't know, Bon Jovi.
No, he doesn't sell it like the boss does. But yeah.
But they're not just the singers. So Let It Rock was pretty good. I'm just looking at the track list. You Give Love a Bad Name. I remember that came out, and that was really good at the time. Living on a Prayer. Wanted Dead or Alive is a better ballad than Every Rose Has a Thorn.
It's much better. Come on.
And Raise Your Hands, I remember that being good. Like, this is a lot more unifying, the Bon Jovi album. There's a lot more unity. Like, you can imagine people being joyful, singing along to these songs and being in room. And at Guns N' Roses concert, you can imagine people being belligerent, right? I don't know. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to say that that's the fact. What I'm saying is that's my imagination of the two albums, right?
It's almost like in the 60s, if you were a Beatles person, the parents approved. If you were a Stones person, they didn't.
Yeah.
I think in some ways.
And the other thing is, although I don't know what exactly I'm basing this on, that Guns N' Roses to me isn't quite a hair metal band. If Motley Crue is a hair metal band, then so is Guns N' Roses. I mean, and so, but somehow it's not it's not themes. It's not what they're trying to accomplish that separates them out of the hair metal thing to me so much as the kind of tones and the kinds of sounds. Like, it's a much more Stonesy kind of feel. However, if you listen back to it, that was their impression at the time. It's still got your like metal, your Boss Metal Zone distortion pedal sound on there, right?
Yeah.
And then if I look at these songs, Welcome to the Jungle, you get sick of, but it's a great track. Paradise City, Mr. Brownstone is actually amazing. Just if I'm taking it just as a song that makes you want to rock, I guess.
Yeah, I love that track. I love that track.
Yeah. But if you look at this, Sweet Child of Mine maybe isn't sleazy, but it probably is. They're all got a kind of sleazy. Yeah.
It actually sticks out on the album. It's such an odd song that it doesn't. I mean, it's catchy. I understand why it's a hit, but it doesn't actually mesh that well with the rest of the album. So
I'm going to I'm going to justify what I'm going to say with this is that I think the GNR album draws me in a lot more than the Slippery When Wet album, and that doesn't surprise either of you. But it also kind of ashames me.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna let Slippery When Wet have another week. I'm gonna vote for it. Yeah.
Yerk, I am impressed, man. I didn't see that coming.
No.
I could have gone either way here, and I would have backed you up. But I wonder what Chris is gonna pick.
GNR all the way.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's closer than you would think, just because, like, I appreciate and recognize just how monumental that album is. and it's certainly a much ballsier album and greasier album and rockier album than Slippery When Wet. Like that GNR album is really raw,
Super
just
produced.
straight up rock and roll kind of like throwback album, right? And that's what's made it so enduring all this time, is that it encapsulated that so well. From my just personal preference, that's where that comes into play here, is like I have my own lens to put on it, and like I like pop, and I like keyboards, and there's other things that I'm looking for too and stuff. But like pop wise, that Slippery When Wet album is just like, it's mind blowing that's an album that they put together with all of those songs in one go, and then they followed it up with New Jersey, which was even bigger than this one. That's remarkable. Whereas GNR, they kind of started out really, really awesome, and then it was all downhill after that point, really.
Yeah, it really
For them.
was. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they
Um,
shouldn't have done a double album. That's what they shouldn't have done. If they did
Yeah.
a single one, that's a pretty good album too.
Yeah,
Cut out all
they
the
did.
filler.
Yeah, for sure.
But that's the ego of Axl. That's what that is.
For sure. And they still, I mean, they pulled it off in terms of like
Those were
sales
huge
and
albums.
stuff. Those are really big albums, but to listen to them, they're not an appetite for
It's
sure.
terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
No appetite
there's
for
that
it.
piece, and just from like a selfish musician point of view, like you're looking for albums in the 80s, or I'm looking for albums in the 80s where people are playing keyboards in it as well as guitar. And like Bon Jovi is one of the poster boys for rock albums that have keyboards in it. Whereas GNR, there's a mini Moog in Paradise City for about 30 seconds, and then that's it. There's no other keyboards in that whole album, right? So there's more for me to draw me into Slippery When Wet or New Jersey, because I can listen to it through the eyes or the ears of a keyboard player. And just like the pop writing and lyric writing and arrangements and stuff are just a bit more in my world on that album than they are with Guns N' Roses. Is like listening to something that is not of my world. I'm voyeuring into someone else's really seedy world that I'm not part of, and I can appreciate it, and it's really, as art, is amazing.
I think Axl has a song about that, voyeuring into somebody else's world.
Yes.
It's CD.
I guess that would be the last thing I would say too, is just again, it's personal preference. Because some people, John Bon Jovi's voice would drive them crazy. For me, Axl's voice is like, it's a bit of an acquired taste, right?
Yeah, I would think Axl would drive you crazy.
Hearing a whole album of John Bon Jovi singing versus a whole album of Axl singing is sort of like, if you weren't of that time, it's a little harder to take, I think. Hearing Axl sing, being from that time, like listening to Axl sing on Appetite for Destruction is just like, yeah, of course it sounds like that. That's Axl Rose. But if you're someone brand new and coming and listening to this, Bon Jovi sounds like a singer, and Axl sounds like, whoa, what is this? So,
but no, to his credit, nobody sounds like Axl. He is,
nope.
You know, like he's almost a Neil Young of hair metal, where it's like you can kind of question the choices and wonder, but you know it's Axl Rose the second you hear it, right?
Yeah.
John Bon to a certain extent too, but Axl's such a weird talent. Like it's hard to quantify. I respect the man in so many ways, and he really turns me off in a lot of ways too. So it's hard to. Yeah. Sorry, I cut you off there, Chris. Go ahead.
No, that's pretty much like for me, it was a closer call than you'd probably think, just because I totally respect. I love that album, warts and all, and like the cringiness of it, some of the lyrics, topics and stuff and all. But if I go with what I just love listening to more, it's got to be Slippery When Wet. So I would pick that one over
Yeah.
Appetite.
Two great albums. Really, like they still deserve listens.
Totally.
Guns N' Roses, in a weird way, I joked last week that they sort of closed the book on hair metal in some ways because they were so much better than other bands at that time. Like there was a lot of meat on the bone. The guitar stuff was so, like, they were just a really good rock and roll band, and the punk connection, as you said, like I think in a weird way paved the way for the Nirvanas a little bit, where people were sick of the fabricated.
Yeah.
And I mean, Bon Jovi was the origin, and then everyone copied that in some way, you know. But they were really tired of that, and it was nice to get some. I think the sort of Kurt Cobains of the world benefited from that because they were just who they were and unique and the real deal, and not fabrications of any kind of record company.
Yeah.
So that first GNR album really had that. So
we didn't really talk about Slash, and he's
we didn't talk about guitar at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's an important part
Slash
of that.
Great.
Yeah.
But really, both bands. Richie Sambora is a great guitar player. Probably not the rebel that Slash is, right? GNR has more like that Motley Crue street cred kind of thing. LA must have, imagine going to high school in LA in about 1982, because like it's all those bands. I think actually Steven Adler and even like Flea and those guys knew each other in high school and stuff. Like all those guys were just around that time. They all went. That's just it's mind-boggling to think of some of the bands that came out of there. Like that whole time, the Red Hot Chili Peppers were just bubbling underneath, waiting for the alternative explosion. You know, all those bands right in there. Jane's Addiction, all that stuff. There's, it's a crazy time and such a crossover and changeover in musical tastes. But they're not that far apart, really, when you just they're kind of from the same spot. So I love the first when you watch the Welcome to the Jungle video, because that was the first release. Axl has hair metal hair in the video on all the live footage, and you never saw him with that again. It's like I think they were told, like, you better distance yourself from all these other bands. Like, you don't want to be White Lion, guys. Like, let's move on, right? I always laughed. I'm like, oh, it's hair metal. And then the rest was just his stringy, long hair and his white leather jacket. So, anyway, this was the toughest bracket. Really tough. Because I do actually kind of like both these albums.
Me too.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you guys want to do the other thing?
Sure.
You want to do that now?
I think.
Okay, well, Jorg had an idea, because, we're going to run out of topics to talk about, is to make a super group. We should do this each week. So here's our super group of the remaining 8 albums, even though 4 got booted out tonight. What was it? A drummer, a bass player, 2 guitar players, a keyboardist, and a singer? Is that the deal?
Yeah, it ended up being 6 people,
All right, well, let's start just with the drummer. Let's just go, like, from, no offense, Anthony's not here, so we can make fun of drummers. Let's go in order of importance.
Anthony has probably distanced himself from us, right?
Anthony wants nothing to do with this. We do have a great drummer in this band. He doesn't like us that much. He doesn't like us. He's either music. Working or not. We don't know. Yeah. He would hate all of these albums. So, drummers. Who would the drummer of your super group be? So at Van Halen, you got Alex Van Halen, of course. Ooh, I can't even name the Cinderella drummer off the top of my head. I can see him, but I can't.
Can I
do you
tell
have the
you
names there?
What I thought? How I thought
Ricky Rocket
is
Tommy Lee.
Oh yeah.
Can I tell you what I was thinking about is when I was listening to Stay Hungry, and I thought this is the
AJ
only this is the only singer in the group that has the kind of cheesy charisma of not the same, but of David Lee Roth. And
he does for sure.
And it sort
D
of
carries that band.
Could you listen to D? Well, could you listen is maybe a different question. Could you picture D singing Panama? Because I can, right? Like,
yeah, it'd be kind of awesome, actually.
Yeah.
He'd have the bone. They'd be like, I don't know what to think anymore.
Anyways, do we want to build it from the ground up, or I just thought we'd probably just do our picks and then what What would you
Well, I
pick?
think let's go roll by roll here.
All right.
Because we're gonna poison each other's answer, I think.
Okay.
So drummers, boy, I didn't do my homework. I can't remember I wish I could remember Cinderella's drummer. I feel bad about that. Ricky Rocket is Poisons.
Fred
Obviously,
Corey.
Tommy Lee with Motley. What is it?
Yeah.
Fred Corey.
Oh,
on
okay.
Cinderella.
That doesn't even ring a bell. So I guess I'm missing that. Steven Adler we already talked about. I think we know who's going to win. Tico Torres for Bon Jovi. He was actually a great drummer.
It's an awesome
Bon Jovi
drummer.
always had a great drummer. He's really good. I believe it's AJ Perot, right? He recently passed away. Twisted Sister lost a member a few years ago. I think I saw a thing when they hired him. He was just a biker and like hardly even played drums, but they liked his attitude kind of thing. And it explains his drum fills, I think. And then Rick Allen, of course, with Def Leppard, with two arms. Now, how are we doing this? Like now?
We're doing the album, so
or we're doing it at the time? Like, am I voting for a two-arm drummer or a one-arm drummer?
Two-arm Allen.
Okay, so I'll let me. What should I say here? I'll talk about Rick Allen because when I saw Def Leppard a few years ago, he was kind of the highlight of the show. It was, and even when I read the review the next day, everyone was just like gushing about Rick Allen, and sort of he's just so like lovable, and he had this sort of quality to him, which I thought was really cool. AJ Pro, I just said, I have no connection to him as a drummer. I don't think he's pretty average as a drummer, but whatever, he served the purpose. Tico Torres, I've always really liked, actually. Bon Jovi's a great band. Just top to bottom musicianship. They are world class, man. They are solid. And Tico Torres is a very good drummer. I would play with Tico any day, and his name's fun to say, Tico Torres. Alex Van Halen is a great drummer, but he's not as great as his brother is, and the poor bastard's got to live with that his whole life. But he's a good rock drummer. I mean, it's great. Cinderella, I think, is just a pretty typical straight-ahead rock drummer. Ricky Rocket, I think he thought he was John Bonham or something, but he's really not. I like Fallen Angel, but the drum fill, every single time the same drum fill, always pisses me off. Tommy Lee is more flat. It's like more sizzle than steak. He's a great drummer. I got nothing against Tommy Lee as a drummer, but he's not. People act, again, like he's John Bonham of 80s metal, and I don't think he is. So if I'm going to pick my favorite drummer, I've never understood why Guns N' Roses wouldn't let Steven Adler back in the band. He went through all kinds of terrible drug issues and stuff. I thought for the reunion tour they should have brought him back, and they did. They kind of screwed him over, which is typical Axl mentality. So I am going to stand up for Steven Adler, man. He's my boy.
There you go.
This is the hardest position for me to talk about because when I was listening, especially the 16 albums, that drums, the rhythm section, I think is what I don't like about this music. And then
pretty cliched all the way through.
Yeah, it doesn't swing, it doesn't groove. It's not, to me, there's
the world of click tracks, right?
It's all about who's out front with these bands. So I was going to go Steven Adler, but I'm toying with Tommy Lee just because of his swagger as a drummer. He does have a
lot of swagger, yeah.
And so I'm just going to pick Tommy Lee.
All right. Christopher, what do you got? We don't have to agree. We can each have our own.
Yeah, no. If I'm picking like my favorite drummer, I would definitely pick Rick Allen or Tico Torres, but I would pick Rick Allen, except if we're picking like a super group, sort of like an all-star band, I don't know how you like it. To me, it's got to be Tommy Lee. Out of all the drummers that are on the list, he's the one that
he's an icon.
He's the icon. If you're making an all-star band, like if Kiss had made it in this round, which they did not, but if they had made it and you had bass players and you didn't pick Gene, that'd be a little bit wrong. So drummers to not pick Tommy Lee is kind of like
he's probably one of the 10 most recognizable drummers, honestly, in the history of the world.
Yeah,
like if you quizzed people on who are famous drummers, he'd probably show up on that list. Whether he deserves to be up there with
totally
some of these guys.
But, it wouldn't be the drummer that I would want to play with in a band. But if we're making like a super group, I would pick Tommy Lee.
Yeah.
That's why
Okay.
he was on Rockstar Supernova, if you remember back in the day.
I do remember with Jason Newsted and the guy.
The
who
other
played
guy
guitar.
from GNR. That was like, I think he changed guitar strings once for Slash. Yeah, Supernova.
Okay.
All right, let's do other instruments that
Bass.
Mike's not here, so
Bass next.
so we have 1984. We got Michael Anthony, of course. We have Eric. I didn't have to look this up. Eric Brittingham is the bass player of Cinderella. Bobby Dahl, which is the worst name ever, is Poisons. Of course, Nikki Sixx with Motley Crue. What's his name? I should know this. Guns N' Roses.
Duff McKagan.
Duff McKagan. Thank you. Sorry, I just slip around. What Bon Jovi had Alec John Such back in the day for that album.
Yeah,
and they kind of kicked him out, and like he was always the non-musical member of that band. So I think I'll go with John and Richie on this. He probably doesn't deserve to be in the conversation if he wasn't allowed to tour with them much longer. Twisted Sister, is it Mark the Animal Mendoza? I'm trying to remember who's who.
That's him. Mark the Animal
This is all off the top of
Mendoza.
my head. I have an issue. I remember these things.
Yeah.
And then it's the other. Who is it with Def Leppard? I could see the hair. What's his name?
Rick Savage.
Rick Savage. The other Rick, right? Yeah, Rick Savage. Sure, that was his last name. Bass players. Yeah, I guess supergroup or my love. Nikki Sixx wrote pretty much all the Motley Crue catalog. I don't think he's a great bass player. Duff McKagan is a pretty cool guy, actually. To his credit, it's always funny how all the cool GNR members they live on. I think it helped as they moved on. And what was the band they did with the
Velvet
Stone
Revolver.
Temple Pilot, Velvet Revolver?
Velvet Revolver.
A lot of those guys is kind of. Slash is probably a pretty cool guy, and Duff's a pretty cool guy. I watched his documentary that on Netflix with him. He seemed pretty legit. And I can sing his bass parts to Sweet Child of Mine. It's probably my favorite part of the song because the radio edit always cuts out the extended intro. I don't really like Slash's guitar riff at the beginning. I know everyone wants to play that all the time, but I've always thought the bass part in that, when they finally get to the whole band, is awesome in that, which is great. Mark the Animal Mendoza looked really mean in the pictures. He always scared the hell out of me. So he looked like a football player that they changed the black makeup around his eyes for catching punts into pink or something. Like he just looked kind of out of place. That bad. He's probably not a very good bass player, but I always kind of liked that. Rick Savage, it's just such typical Def Leppard. I'm sure he's fine. He was always wearing the mic on stage so he could walk around and hit on chicks and kind of. I know I really like that too much. If I'm gonna do supergroup, Eric Brittingham for hair for sure. Bobby Dahl, I hate his name. I actually don't like that guy very much at all. He needed someone to write songs, but I'm gonna give Michael Anthony the kudos because maybe I'm doing all underdogs. I went with Steven Adler for the other one. If there's a member of Van Halen that gets shit on more than Michael Anthony. It's like he's like the Ringo of that band. Everyone downplays his talent. He sang all the backup vocals too, and he's one of those guys in a band. And he's a good bass player. I've seen him live. I've seen him he can play. I don't understand the questions about him. So I'm gonna go Michael Anthony.
Yeah. Michael Anthony's probably. I was thinking that I would just pick the whole rhythm section of Van Halen, to be honest. But I wanted to try and make it a supergroup and not just Van Halen.
Which is the supergroup until we get the singer.
Which is the supergroup of this.
And then I wish we brought in what's Sammy's old band there. We would have made Van Hagar. That would be the supergroup.
With Montrose.
Montrose, there it is, yeah.
Yeah. With the singer from Montrose.
Only.
I'm more basing this just on what I like to listen to rather than any kind of really overly thought is Duff McKagan. I just like the melodic approach to bass.
He's a good player. He's really good. Adds a lot to that band.
Too, right?
Yeah.
I think those are the two that I would be picking between out of all of these. I mean, Rick Savage is actually quite a good bass player and good backing vocals and help write the songs and stuff. So, he would be a good choice too. But all of the other ones, yeah, I would say either Duff or Michael Anthony. Michael Anthony for the bass playing and obviously the backing vocals. Like his harmony vocals are amazing. So, which would be handy to have in the band.
He's the best singer in Van Halen.
Yes. So, but I would also be fine with Duff just because I think he's seemed like a really solid bass player, but just like smart songwriting guy and stuff. So he'd be like a cool guy to have in the rhythm section, I think.
He went and got like a master's. He's got like a business, a bachelor's degree in business. He did all this stuff after he was like, because he realized how much money he was getting screwed out of all these deals. So he's an interesting guy. He's pretty cool.
Yeah.
All right. Third instrument that doesn't matter. I think keyboards.
Who are you drafting, Chris?
Come on! I was trying to cut him up here. You cut me up.
I'll go with Duff.
All right.
Okay.
Both those boys can swill some Jack Daniels, I think. So that's fair.
Yes.
Keyboards. Not that there's
not a lot.
I know who I'm gonna pick here.
Yeah. There's not a lot of options here.
There's not a lot. I mean,
but
like Chris, you go ahead. You're the expert here. So.
The band that had a dedicated keyboard player was Bon Jovi. And so Bon Jovi's keyboard player was David Bryan, one of the original members. He's still with them.
He's got some hair.
He's got hair, and he's also
awesome
in rock keyboard circles. He's not a soloist the way that Eddie Van Halen is. But in terms of his stature as a keyboard player in a rock band, he's up there with any guitarist that you can name. As far as keyboardists are concerned, he was pretty much the man. So it would be hard to not have David Bryan in your band, I think. Eddie's the odd one out just because he's good at everything. But to have him not be your guitarist would be probably a crime. So and really hard to hold him back from like leaping out on stage and doing the solos if other people are trying to do solos probably. So in my super group, you have Eddie on guitar, maybe doubling up on keyboards once in a while, and have David Bryan from Bon Jovi as the other keyboardist.
Yeah, I thought about drafting 3 guitar players so that I could make this happen, but because similar to Eddie's guitar playing as a keyboardist, he's also he's got that mojo. You know what I mean? Like he can
totally.
He's got the thing. Whether it's technical or not is beside the point. Like he is an interesting keyboard player. He's like he can move. He can make you move.
Yep.
With his keyboards. But I was thinking that too, just to have a dedicated keyboard player. Because I think David Bryan is also multi-instrumentalist, so
he's probably
yeah. So that's what I picked. It's the only band that has a dedicated keyboard player.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Mutt Lange probably played all the keyboards on the Def Leppard album. So
actually, it was Thomas Dolby.
Oh, of course.
Really?
Yeah.
Is it really?
Wow.
That's amazing.
Yes.
Can I pick him?
He had a pseudonym. I can't. If you look on the Pyromania and the Hysteria albums, I can look it up, but there's some pseudonym like Boffer T. Boffin or something.
Okay.
His keyboards, and it's Thomas Dolby.
This is over. Boffer T. Boffin is my choice.
We're talking about the blinded me with science guy.
Yes, because he was also a session musician, and so Mutt brought him in because Mutt knew him, and then he played all the keyboards and synthesizers on Pyromania and then on Hysteria.
Okay, well, so I kind of want to pick him. Booker
so
T.
I don't know if
Boffin.
he counts because he's not part of the band. He was like a session guy.
All right.
But
well,
I'd love to just have Thomas Dolby around.
He would be amazing. Plus, he worked with Van Halen, or Eddie, anyways. So
There you go. Probably helped him build his studio or something, but
He did.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. Yeah, I'll go David Bryan. I mean, because I think Eddie's obviously going to land somewhere else. I find the synthy sounds of that era, like it's just a little too. I love the more sort of analog-y Moo kind of sounds, but David Bryan's a talented dude, man. Listen to the opening of Slippery When Wet. It's their attempt at what's the band song? With the what's the song?
Wait.
What's
no,
that?
the organ
The
one.
Wait. Oh, I'm sorry. That's Chest Fever.
Chest Fever.
Chest Fever. It's like their attempt at Chest Fever there.
Yeah.
And it's all on David Bryan's shoulders. So the sounds don't quite sound as good, but some great players. All right, guitar players. The only thing that matters.
I picked this.
Tough choice.
To me, this was the quickest choice, but it was always going to be who could play guitar with Eddie Van Halen. And so I thought because I don't know, I've never heard Eddie play with other guitar players, so I thought somebody who would be cool to pair him with would be Slash.
Mm-hmm.
That's who I picked too. Was Slash and Eddie as your all-stars super group.
Yep. Okay, I'm gonna do Underdog.
Yeah.
Just because those are the obvious choices. Eddie Van Halen's my number one all day in every category. One of the greatest musicians the last 100 years, and deserves to be credited with that. And, Cinderella, Tom Kiefer, he just kind of does his bluesy rock thing. He's good at it, but Ricky Rocket, he's just a very poor man's Eddie Van Halen, so I'm not even going to try that. Mick Mars, Slash is the obvious choice, and it's the one I would pick. But just to kind of, Richie Sambora, I don't know who would fit in that conversation. He's a great guitar player, but I'm going to look at Def Leppard, because when I saw Def Leppard, I didn't realize how good of a guitar player Phil Collin is.
Yeah.
He's like up the the 80s. There's a certain swagger and a technical ability, and it's a little bit machismo guy thing showing off. But Phil Collin is every bit as good as every other guitar player of that era. And there's this weird tour, the G4 tour, with like Joe Satriani and Steve Vai and Yngwie Malmsteen and all these technical wizards of that era tour around, and they bring other guys in, Paul Gilbert and Nuno Bettencourt and all these other amazingly technical, just disgustingly technical guitar players. And Phil Collin and people were like confused, like, why are you inviting the Def Leppard guy? And they were just like, have you ever heard this guy actually play? It's disgusting how good he is. When I saw them live, Phil Collins got to be 55, 60 years old, shirt off, ripped like crazy. And he just shredded all night. I was like, because you don't hear it on a Def Leppard album. They don't do that on a Def Leppard album, right? It's all very like melodic kind of playing and that sort of thing. So to Phil Collins' credit, he is right up there with all the monsters of that era. But on albums, they serve the song, and he towed the line as Def Leppard would. So I'm just going to give Phil Collins kudos, even though Slash is the obvious second choice. So
I was thinking of Phil Collins too, but then I was
Phil Collins
between
might fit better. But,
Phil Collins and Eddie on the same band would probably be tough if you were to actually make the band.
Yeah.
But just they would both be like trying to outduel each other the whole time, whereas with Slash there'd be more room, I think, for each of them, just because they're such different kind of players.
Mm-hmm.
But Phil Collins is an amazing
if you're looking for true guitar heroes, it's Eddie Van Halen, Slash every day of the week, no question. Just as we said with Tommy Lee, like if you're going to name the great guitar players or the great drummers, those two would come up. So it's hard to argue with that. It's like putting Gretzky and Lemieux on the same line, right?
Yeah.
And Howard Chuck.
Yeah. Don't pass it to Dale. All right, singers.
I was in this list to find it. not. I don't even know if there's some interesting singers, but it's not. We cut off all the really talented singers last week.
Who's the best singer?
Like, I think Paul Stanley is a great singer.
Yeah.
I hate David Coverdale, but he's a good singer. Steven Tyler's a good singer. We cut them all.
I think Steven Tyler would have been my pick if I could go back and bring in a singer.
Yeah.
That guy, he's got the swagger, he's got the voice, he's got it all. That guy is just unbelievable.
Yeah. Aerosmith would have been my pick probably for rhythm section too, but
oh yeah. How did we? Who did?
Yeah.
Oh, that's my fault.
And mine. I already told you my pick. No, just for charisma, I'm going with D Snyder.
I just love to envision that. I wish we could see this. Could you imagine if that was a thing? That here's a super group. Here's the cream of 2021. It's D Snyder. Oh, I love it.
I want to rock.
I want to hear him sing Paradise City. And Panama.
That is awesome, Jorg.
That is pretty
All right,
awesome.
Well,
I'm not gonna lie, that's pretty awesome.
I don't know if I can beat that. I mean, Diamond Dave at that time, his voice has deteriorated so bad. I feel bad for him because he didn't have a lot of voice to begin with. But I love Diamond Dave. I love the solo albums. I still like parts of Eat 'Em and Smile, and it's just he's got a real swagger. He's got this. I joked earlier, but the charisma. Tom Kiefer can't even sing anymore. He lost his voice. Like one of his vocal cords, he got some weird virus and killed it. So that I feel bad for the guy. There's actually really interesting pieces of it on YouTube. You can see about him trying to fight to get his voice back. I feel it's just awful. It's like it's like a world-class hockey player blowing his knee out in the last year of junior or something, right? So that's awful. I don't even want to talk about Bret Michaels because he's terrible.
He's no Vince Neil. Yeah.
Vince Neil, he's had a band with some balls. I keep going like D Snyder. I think I'm just gonna pick D Snyder only because it's fun. But if I was gonna pick the best singer on the group of that time, who's the most unique, and if they could have hired a lyricist, I'm gonna give it to Axl Rose because nobody sounds like Axl Rose. He could hit all the high stuff, all the low stuff. He's a weirdo, and I don't really care for all the other things that go on, but he's the real deal, so I'm going to go with that. Christopher?
I like both of those picks. They're like both of those work. I like them. My own picks were I was deciding between Joe Elliott from Def Leppard or John Bon. Of the time, apart from Diamond Dave, John Bon Jovi was probably the biggest star, biggest frontman, and decent singer. Would be a good frontman for a band. I'm kind of sentimentally leaning toward Joe Elliott just because he's probably an even better rock singer than John Bon Jovi. And if this mega group doesn't have any other Def Leppard representation, then having Joe Elliott as the singer with Slash and Eddie and Tommy Lee and Duff, that's a pretty good.
I want to hear this band.
It's hard to argue with that band, right?
Can you promise me that Joe Elliott will hold a bone while he sings?
No, but I can probably promise you that he'll hold the Stanley Cup and then put it down upside down. Did you ever see that one?
Oh, that was an epic fail, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It's I don't know. I'm from England. What is this thing? It's a Stanley Cup. Put it down. Anyway.
Yeah.
He's a good frontman and a really good singer. If you're going for star quality, John Bon Jovi is probably the biggest one of them all. So you could probably have him do it, but I would prefer to have Joe Elliott as the singer.
All right.
John Bon, his voice has really vanished too. Actually, I've seen some things. He has a lot of backup vocalists that tour with him now and kind of cover up the gaps because it's hard on these guys. It's hard to keep that up all those years. So
Yeah.
All right, just to recap, Jeff's super group
Imagine
is
it.
Steve Adler on drums. You've got
Nice.
Michael Anthony on bass.
Hmm.
What's
This is
the
gonna be a
Bon
bad
Jovi guy's
band.
name?
David Bryan, but
David
I want to pick
Bryan.
the other guy.
And then we
No,
got
I want
we
Thomas
got-
Dolby.
Thomas
Dolby.
All right, Thomas Dolby.
What was his name again?
Eddie Van Halen and Phil
Obama?
Coughlin and Axl. That's a great. That's a hell of a band. Chris has got who was TL again? Shit.
Tommy
Tommy
Lee.
Lee.
Tommy Lee, Duff McKagan, David Bryan, Eddie Van Halen / and Joe Elliott. And I've got
Good man.
Tommy Lee, Duff McKagan, David Bryan, Eddie Van Halen / and Dee Snider.
You win. All
Your
day.
wins.
You're good. That doesn't surprise me.
Should we? I'm gonna stop recording probably.
Yeah, let's sign
Okay.
off. If
Okay.
there's no way you're anyone's.
No.
Thank you.
Thank you.